in probably the feistiest and most tense showdown I've ever seen. The Port Adelaide Power were able to defeat the Crows by about 21 points or so. It was an impressive display from Port. I'll give them their credit first. Just they're the better team, especially after the incident with Rankin and Houston. They just ran out the game. They handled their emotions a bit better. My personal thoughts on how they're able to kind of shrug that aside a bit easier, I'll keep to myself, but they're not. It felt very within character, is all I'll say. But to be able to get the win, they did play really well. Zach Butters to get the 42 disposals, a new showdown high ever. It was impressive, and fair play to them. They've been the better team all year. They were able to finally get a showdown win, which is something they've struggled to do in recent times. The Crows went 2-0 last year, plus in the AFLW and in the SANFL were able to get the win there, and then earlier this year the Crows were able to get the win there. So it was quite an entertaining game, I would say, up until that incident with Houston and Rochelle, and then the tensions they're already high and they just went to a whole nother level, understandably so. But then you could just kind of tell that the Crows just couldn't quite handle the emotions as well as Port, and Port were able to kind of run away with it a bit in the end. But it was the entertainment aspect of it. I thought it was great. It felt like two teams that genuinely hate each other, and that's what you want in a rivalry, especially one that's as strict and as historic as the showdown is. I mean, it's showdown 56, for my money, the best rivalry in the AFL. It just, in terms of how the games normally play, the hatred of them, I think it's the best rivalry, and it's quite common to see that kind of in two team cities. You can get that because I think the Western Australian derby between Freo and West Coast, I think that's also one that's up there. I think that two team city really adds a lot to it, and for the Crows and Port, tensions were high. And I mean, obviously a big reason for that was Josh Rochelli's pre-match kind of media rounds where he said all the Port fans had no teeth, and rightly or wrongly, definitely rightly, he said that, and it didn't work out. The Crows lost, and obviously he looks a bit ridiculous now after doing the celebration. It looks a bit dumb, but for me, I still loved it because, one, it's who he is. He brought the character to the game, brought the personality. It's what you want. I think that's only good for the game. I love the way the Hawks young sides as well will show their personality and the character. I think Rochelle doing that was great. It was better. He knew the risk he was taking. He knew that when he kicked that goal, it might look a bit dumb, but it was worth it. It was entertaining. It added something to the game, and he'll know like, oh, okay, it didn't pay off, but guess what? Like, next time if the showdown comes around next season, go again, and he'll probably try and rile them up again and keep it going, and it just adds more fuel to the fire. And I think that's only a good thing as long as it keeps it, as long as it's kept control. So I've seen something like the Port mascot, I think, was assaulted by fans, and that you can't be assaulting players or mascots or anything like that. It is like the rivalries in sport, in the grand scheme of things, they're not that serious. Let's be real. They're not that serious. I mean, like, I hate Port more than any other sporting team in the world, but it just is a case where at the end of the day, I go to work, I come home, like, I live my life away from the sport as well. Like, it doesn't need to consume that much that you actively hurt people, and so there's no excuse for that. You can't have it in sports of the world. Like, there's no excuse for it. But just from an on-field, that personality, the tempers flaring, I thought it was amazing. he knew the risk he had. I hope he does it again next time and take a look. But the real turning point, as I said earlier, was that Dan Houston hit on Rankin. As I'm recording, it's actually just being confirmed that Dan Houston will miss 5 matches for the hit against Rankin in the showdown, which, as I said, that was the turning point of the game. That's when Port just were able to kick away. The Crows kind of lost their heads a bit, and which was frustrating to see as a Crows fan that they lost their heads, but you could understand. I mean, it was a sickening blow, and I think it's important to note that even as much as I hate Port and I can say that I think they're dirty or whatever, you could see on Dan Houston's face that he didn't mean to injure Isaac Rankin. That he was on the bench, you could see he was visibly shaken by what had happened. You could just tell pretty much from that point on, even though Port were winning, it just looked as though Houston's mind was on Rankin and hoping he's okay, and that's obviously tough for him to go through, but ultimately he did make the decision to bump rather than try and tackle, and in a game of split seconds, like that decision made all the difference. But when you saw Rankin just gets cleaned up, and as soon as he hits the ground, all you see is the arms up, just stiff. He's just laying there when he's being tended to by the trainers. He moves up and his arms look like he's out. Like it was a sickening sight to see, and just well wishes to Isaac Rankin. I hope he's able to recover and stronger. Obviously, there's no chance he'll play this week, and then he'll have the whole off season to get better. And so when concussions are such a hot topic, and rightly so, given how dangerous they can be to players' well-being long term after their footy careers, it's always sickening to see. And you could tell that Houston he didn't mean to injure Rankin. It was just an unfortunate side effect. He probably just got swept up in the moment. They had clearly targeted Rankin to get under his skin and try and niggle him, which made sense because he's got a bit of a temper. He's proven that this season as well. He's not one to back down and can fire up himself. And he's arguably our best player. So he's the kind of player you'd want to target and try and get under the feathers. So I think that made complete sense for him. They were little dirty jabs and tackles and things they did to him throughout the game, which I don't like, but I'm also a Crows fan. I also understand it. It's probably something that I think teams should do more often, and especially in rivalries. I think it's just one of those for players, and it's kind of one of the reasons I did actually really like what Rochelle did in the media rounds, even though it didn't work out, because it felt like the players were invested as the fans. It felt like it mattered to them. Like they're like, no, we hate you, we're going for it. Port fans hate us, we hate Port. Like it felt like the players were really battling out, whereas sometimes you feel like in rivalries you're just like, all these players are just mates, they're acting like they're mates, they're playing, and so they don't really care as much. But it gave that sense of, no, like these players are really in it to win it, and there's real hatred between teams, and which is what you want in those kind of games. But obviously it's boiled over. The big abyss, I think it was so many fines doled out. Unsurprisingly, Zach Butters gets one. Surely there's a point where you get fined so often you get a suspension that they can't all just be an individual basis. I mean, there gets to the point where, hey mate, you're the most fined player in history, and it's so much of that has been recent. We need to suspend you, but is what it is. Probably a conversation for another point. But yeah, Dan Houston, 5-game suspension. His season is over. So that's unfortunate for him. It's just one of those situations when you make that decision to bump, you run the risk of that happening. So it's unfortunate. And from all reports, it's likely that means his Port career is also over. So as he was rumored to be going to Melbourne, that seemingly did a U-turn because of how just the state of Melbourne at the moment. Everything seems so up in the air. about players like Petrarca and Clayton Oliver. I mean, I know Gawn re-signed and actually Jack Viney re-signed as well this season, but everything else just feels all over the place. So you can see why he'd be rethinking that. But the Blues are apparently now interested, so he's a good player. So he'll do well. But yeah, it was a sickening sight, that hit, and it just fully changed the game. And then the last point, like, Port fans showed absolute lack of class, which I'm not shocked at, I'll be honest. It's just they're like Collingwood fans in that sense. They boo off Isaac Rankin as he's going off on a stretcher, and that is despicable. Like, it is one thing to boo a player on the opposition side, like, and that booing itself has been a hot topic. My personal view on it is showdowns and rivalry games, boo all you want. You should just never boo a player who's injured themselves, like as they're coming off, like Rankin was, or if it was another injury. I don't think you should ever do that. There always needs to be that degree of sportsman. Obviously, never boo a player for racism or for their race. Like, that is just never okay under any circumstances at all. And things like, I think if you're booing to get under the skin, or if it's like a former player returning home, it's a bit like, you left our club, like things like that. To me, I think it's okay on the field, but I think you need to understand, people in general need to understand there is a degree of respect. It needs to stop once they're off the field, kind of thing. Like, you can't just continue that energy in their DMs and things like that, which I'm sure Josh Shelley will be dealing with. I'm sure Dan Houston's also copying a lot, so I kind of hope he's getting the well-being as well that he'll need to kind of get through this, because I think obviously saw with the mascot being attacked, like, he'll be absolutely copying it. So I do hope he's able to kind of move along, and everyone can kind of just leave it how it was. But yeah, I think just the bullying, to me, as long as you keep it on the field and keep that energy, like hey, you're a former player, you're returning home, we're gonna boo you, put you off, hope you have a bad game, end it there when it ends. Or rivals, we're gonna boo you as you're kicking a shot and to try and put you off, things like that. It's fine, but never boo a player who's injured and things like that. It was just so classless and so unnecessary as well. You just like, what are you doing? This player is clearly knocked out. It wasn't even like a 50-50. Like, the Lions fans did it to Rankin when he hit Starcevic, which at the time I thought was wrong for them, because he was also concussed. In the ground, because I saw that game live, as I live in Brisbane, I thought it was a bit more of a coming together and kind of just like an accidental thing. Looking back in the replay after the match the next couple of days, I understood. I felt like the suspension was a bit much, but I could kind of get it in a sense. But like, at least looking back, like, I understand. I don't think they should have booed him in that instance, but he did come back on. So when he got the ball, I think I kind of get that you've injured one of your players. Like, I think that's fair enough to boo that player to get off, but to actually boo a player who's going off on a stretcher injured, that is just a whole another level of low. And it was just pure lack of class. From otherwise what was quite an exciting game. I think if you took away that hit and that game played out to the middle, played out to the end, and I'd say how it was. I personally, and it might just be hopeful thinking, I think the Crows would have won in the end. Obviously, shoulda, coulda, wouldas don't matter now. So, but I do think that's how it would have went. It would have been, for me, one of the best showdowns in history, especially if you could have gone to another after the siren. I mean, the dream was similar to how Jordan Dawson kicked one after the siren. If Rochelle did that, that would have been my absolute dream scenario for that showdown. But you probably would have had people storming the ground. So, but I think seeing the tensions rise, I think both teams really getting into the rivalry, I think made it exciting to watch. I felt sick watching that game. It just, showdowns are a whole different level of nerves. Like, I get anxious watching any Crows game, but watching the showdown's just different gravy, to be honest. But it was exciting. Congrats to Port, they got the win. Hopefully they go out in straight sets in the finals, and next season we can come back stronger and go there. But ultimately, let me know your thoughts as well on Rochelle, his celebration, his media antics, that Houston hit 5 weeks for it. Is that the right amount? Too low, too high? Let me know your thoughts down the bottom, and your thoughts generally on even the best rivalry in the AFL. Who you think it is? Do you think it's a historical rivalry like a Essendon Collingwood, Carlton Collingwood kind of thing? Maybe the Western Derby, not accepting the Q clash. Absolutely no fucking way that can be there. But all the rest, let me know what you think is the best rivalry in the AFL. Thanks for watching. This has actually been a clip excerpt from my full-length podcast, the Armchair Athlete podcast. So make sure to check the channel for all the other clips, watch the videos in full. Make sure to like and subscribe, and let me know your thoughts on the video below. Any topics or feedback you want to discuss, throw them down below. It'd be good to hear from you guys. But yeah, as I said, make sure to subscribe and check out the channel for more.